Hi there, and welcome to the latest edition of Cool People. Now, after the last 2.5 years, after coming out very publicly as being transgender and then doing lots of trans awareness training, public speaking and media appearances, my world has opened up enormously and I've made a whole load of new friends, amazing friends with incredible stories to tell. And so the whole idea of Cool People is to share my friends with you. And so today I've got a really inspirational friend with me called Bobbi Pickard. Now, Bobbi is a senior project manager for BP, and she's also the co-chair of the BP Pride transgender group. She's the director of TransKnowledge. She's the founder of Trans in the City. She's a trustee for Mermaids. And if that's not enough with all of that, and as well as all the awards that she's won as well, by the way, she also founded the recent Trans Rights Are Human Rights campaign, which was campaigning for the Gender Recognition Act reform, which we will talk about probably quite a bit later on in the interview. But it was basically her brainchild. So welcome, Bobbi.
Hi, Katie. How are you?
All right, thanks. Thanks ever so much for joining me today. So I've been looking forward to this one.
Yeah, me too, actually. It's always good to have a natter with you, so it's good.
Yes. So I just thought probably the best thing to do before we sort of start talking about all the other stuff, I think probably best if you sort of just run us through your story and, probably start, when was the earliest time that you felt different?
Yeah, sure. So I'm in my early 50s now. I think we're about the same age.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously I look younger, but... So my earliest...
I'll edit that bit out, Bobbi. I have the power.
I couldn't resist that, sorry. I'm such a bugger with these, I'm so sorry.
No, that's staying in. This is a good start, isn't it?
Right, anyway, sorry, I do apologise. No, so, I think so, like lots of transgender people, I've always felt I was transgender, or always felt that I am transgender. My earliest memory was sitting underneath my mum's ironing board in the early 70s and wondering what I'd done wrong, because she was buying me boys' clothes and boys' toys and not getting me the same things as my sister, and me and my sister are the same, so why am I being treated differently? That it's never really eased up. I mean, sometimes it's felt slightly less strong, and sometimes it's felt more strong. But I mean, I remember I used to go around my nan's when I was really young, probably 5 or 6, and she was I've no idea why. Maybe it was like a 50s sort of diva type thing, where she had a collection of wigs and sort of really floaty clothing, and I used to go around her house, and first thing I used to do was run upstairs and put one of her wigs on and just be me,
Was that in secret, or did she see that?
No, everybody saw that, and it was probably when I was about that age, actually, probably about 5 or 6, that it was kind of spelled out that that's not what boys did, and I shouldn't be doing that, and lots of other little things. I used to play with my sister's doll's house, which used to infuriate her, and I always wanted a doll, but I wasn't allowed one. But I was later allowed action men. I think my action men had the least action adventures of anybody. We used to just bugger off down the garden and just have chats and just drive about in cars and stuff like that. So it was really nice. I can very definitively tell you that Barbie's clothes don't fit action men as well, which was one of the largest disappointments of my childhood.
It's just not right, is it?
Yeah, it's just disgraceful. I mean, they should have, all those outfits for action men, and there wasn't a single decent one. But and so, my childhood kind of just progressed. I mean, I guess even in those days, the 70s weren't the most politically correct or trans-aware period to grow up in.
Not at all.
And I don't think it took me very long to pick up on like the ridicule of really the only role models that I even vaguely had in those days, which was like, Dick Emery and Carry On films. It didn't take me very much to pick up that they were figures of ridicule and everyone was laughing at them, and that was kind of how I felt. So I guess that was the first time that I really started hiding my true self away and projecting the image of what I thought people wanted me to be.
Exactly. So that was the culture at the time, wasn't it? I mean, I would say we were the same age, so it was just a big no-no, wasn't it?
It was, absolutely, and it was, and I think whenever any child does that, and it happens now, it happens today. Whenever any child starts projecting a version of themselves that isn't themselves because they think that's the person that can be loved, then the person that's in the middle, the real person, is somebody that thinks that they can't be loved. Their real self can't be loved. And I guess that was the start of self-esteem plummeting and self-loathing and all the rest of the stuff. And my dad was fairly strict. He's not with us anymore. And I think it kind of made a very difficult environment for me to be myself in. It made an impossible environment for me to be myself in. My dad had an accident when I was about 12, I think. And from that accident, he came back with some fairly nasty physical and mental injuries that made him sort of very short-tempered and quite explosively violent in the first years, and I guess that compounded on top of everything. And when I was 14 was the first time that I really came very close to taking my own life. I spent an entire night with a knife, really rough night. And there wasn't any really sort of massive blinding light telling me that I shouldn't do it, but that my alarm went off in the morning after a whole night of crying my eyes out, and my alarm went off. I just put the knife down and just went off to school and just really struggled on all the way through my teenage years. And really that was really the roller coaster that was my life, really, until 48, which I think it was the same year that you
about 48.
Yeah, I mean, it's great year.
Yeah.
But
so you were struggling all that time then? It was just...
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it doesn't mean that there weren't some amazingly happy times in my life, by the way, when my kids were born. And, some of the memories that I have with my kids were just absolutely fantastic. And actually, that's why I wouldn't change anything. But, my underlying level of happiness was terrible. And 2 or 3 times a year, I'd go on this massive roller coaster of suicidal ideation and self-destruction, and almost get to the stage where, I'd really get to the stage where, I almost was attempting suicide or getting really close to it or doing something self-destructive or whatever. And I guess when I was 47 or 48 was the time that I found myself standing at the side of the road, I was working in Crawley at the time by a council refuse tip. It was a lovely area I was working in. Found myself at the side of the road on a blind bend on a humpback bridge where these huge tipper lorries were screaming backwards and forwards. And I just knew, it's one of those things, I think, when you're always in that sort of cycle of suicidal ideation, is you always keep an eye out on, subconsciously almost, on where the best places would be. And I knew it was a great place to go, so I just ended up there. Came so close to doing it. I stepped out in front of one lorry and timed it differently. Timed it wrong, rather. And it just missed me.
God.
Clipped the wing mirror, actually clipped the front of my hair. And I was going to jump out in front of the next lorry when I realised that I hadn't written the songs out that I wanted for my funeral. When being like a musician, it's something that's really important for me. And I just wanted that one bit of my life to be right. I wanted that one bit of my life to be perfect. Just me, And so I was so angry with myself for not doing it. So angry. And I sort of hummed and hawed and then decided to go back home, right at the list, put it in my bedside cabinet, so no one would know about it, and then just discover it at some point later. So I didn't want anybody to know that I'd done it myself. I wanted it to be an accident, so nobody would know. And then on the way home, I stopped at the top of Epsom Downs, where I used to live. I was trying to get myself into a state where I could, go home and no one would know what a complete wreck I was. And I just heard a song by Sia, David Guetta, Titanium, and it was those words of that song at that particular minute that actually made me think that maybe I should just give it another day, and days turned into weeks, and the weeks turned into months, and I guess about a year afterwards, I guess I really pulled myself out of that latest really, really dark phase. But I kind of reached a stage where I was just sick to death of just everything being so bleak and life just being this roller coaster of reaching just like an okay and then plummeting down to really, really bleak and rubbish. I was just fed up with it. I was just worn out. So I just decided that I either needed to transition or I needed to get on and kill myself, really. And luckily, I decided to transition. Good decision.
Yeah.
And since then, it's been amazing. It's been the amount of colour I see in the world is fantastic. I've never had this level of happiness ever before.
It's amazing.
The level of happiness that I have now is so amazing that even the times where I feel fed up are still better than my underlying level of happiness that it was before. So it's phenomenal. Best thing.
It's incredible, isn't it? Because so much is spoken about gender dysphoria, the discomfort and the anguish that you feel with that mismatch between your head and your heart and your sex characteristics and the label you've been given at birth. But not many people talk about gender euphoria, and it is euphoric, isn't it? I've lost count of the number of people who told me that I look so much happier now, and I really am. I really am. It's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. There's. I think people underestimate how much of a load on your mental well-being it is to pretend to be somebody else, to try and fit into a society that you just don't fit into, and all of that extra baggage, and actually what a huge erosion that is over the years. You might be able to stand up to it when you're younger and think that you can cope with it and manage it and all the rest, but you can't, because it just wears you down and it just sucks all of the joy out of the world. And it's, it just feels like I've just been given all of that joy back, and this year's been hard for everybody. This year's been terrible for everybody, but it's still, I still sit there and I just get joy out of just the most silly things, looking at trees, looking at the sea, you just see.
I'm the same, exactly the same.
Well, yeah. And yeah, I think we've spoken about it before, haven't we? It's I think we both. I wouldn't change anything in my life before, and that's a question that loads of people ask. Do you regret not transitioning earlier? And undoubtedly, if I'd have transitioned earlier, I mean, aside from the fact that it would have been so much harder in those days to transition, but all things being equal, would I have liked to have transitioned earlier? Yeah, of course I would. I'd have liked to have been born as the person that I am, but actually, I've got such just amazing memories and I've been so privileged to have two amazing kids. I've had an amazing career. I've done all of those things. And actually, all of that crap that I went through has made me as well. So I don't want to throw away any of that. I wouldn't want to be a different person, really. So
yeah, I feel the same way, to be honest. I mean, obviously my story is completely different, and so for me it was that the gender dysphoria increased over time, and so it was at a lower level earlier on, and I was completely unprepared for it to increase to the level that it did when it did. So it's a completely different story for me. And so I'm completely at ease with my past, because I'm proud of the person that I was before, and I'm completely at ease with my past, and I don't want to wipe out the previous 48 years of my life.
No, exactly. And you're still the same person. And I think that's the thing that people
exactly.
And I think even maybe some trans people maybe run away from that, and I can understand why they do that. And actually, I completely support why some trans people do that. But for me, it's if you want to quote cheesy Aerosmith lyrics, life's a journey, not a destination, isn't it? And it's the journey that forges our strength and our resilience, and it's our experiences that help make us more empathic to other people's experiences, and maybe try and do some good, really, and I guess, I know you're exactly the same in that, it's not a motivation for me doing it is just to try and stop people going through the same experience that I did, really, because
exactly. And the thing is, we're both, I think, quite similar, and we've both got very outgoing personalities, and so we're able to use that to be able to help other people, because a lot of trans people aren't strong enough to stand up in front of an audience and tell their story and do all that sort of stuff. But at least we're able to do it, and it is helping lots of people, and so
I hope so.
God, definitely.
It's funny with because actually I don't have an outgoing personality. I'm actually really quiet and shy, but I've kind of forged this Bobbi the showgirl. Actually, probably not showgirl. It's probably
jazz hands. You could have jazz hands.
Yeah, but no, but it's I've been playing in bands for lots of years. I've been playing in bands since I was about 16. And so I do have I had a stage persona that I bought, that I invented to help cope with nerves and everything when I was performing on stage and being the front person of a band, and I guess doing all the sort of senior management stuff. Then you do a lot of public speaking, and the way to deal with that is to, invoke your inner Freddie Mercury and be somebody else, be yourself, but the performer version of yourself. So I guess that's the version of me that people get when they talk to me publicly, or when I speak in person, when I'm sitting at home. I think I'm still I don't know. You have to ask people. I'm a lot more quiet normally.
Yeah. I've always been a big show off. I played in bands, as you know, for many years as well, and so used to sort of talking to audiences and stuff, and being on stage.
Yeah.
And then, of course, obviously being a photographer as well, you can't be a shrinking violet doing that sort of job, especially with press photography.
No.
You get in all sorts of situations, and so and working in photographic departments at newspapers, they're always the most boisterous departments of the whole newspaper. It was just, so I've sort of been sort of brought up with all of that and sort of being really outgoing. And so I suppose it's just been an extension of that, really, with what I'm doing. So always been a gob on a stick.
Brilliant.
Yeah. So I'm just recently, you got me involved with it, but I'm so grateful you did, with the Trans Rights are Human Rights campaign. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the Trans Rights Human Rights campaign really came as an extension to Trans in the City. So the whole idea of Trans in the City was something that I started 3 years ago. So I did when I first came out at BP, so I was the first openly trans person at BP. I think we've got 9 now. So I did trans awareness training and the usual things that people do inside their own companies. And, I knew at that time I didn't want it to be... At that time, loads of different companies were just competing. So competing for better events, competing for better gender transition guidelines. And it's not what the trans community needed or needs. What we need is collaboration, and we need people working together to help the trans community, not do things for a company or an individual. So that was the whole idea between Trans in the City. So I wanted to take all of that trans awareness training, and I wanted to get other companies joining in, sharing their experiences and role models, and really everybody pushing in the same direction. So for the first year, I really struggled and fought tooth and nail, and got 7 companies involved, and we ran an event in Canary Wharf. The second year, it had grown to 65 companies.
That's a huge increase, isn't it? Brilliant.
Yeah, and this year it's probably around about 350.
Wow.
Unofficially, and probably around 200 that are officially joined up. Different companies have
brilliant
different internal policies of what they can, publicly sign up to. But it's huge, and it takes up a huge amount of my time, and as you know, when I turn up to meetings, completely shattered. But the trans rights are human rights thing really was something that came organically from this year. So we had all of the issues from the government implying it was going to roll back trans rights through the GRA earlier on in this year.
Yeah.
And there was some phenomenal campaigns that came about because of that publicly on social media. There was an amazing one from Mermaids. There was one from Gender Intelligence. Stonewall did one. But it was fairly obvious that there wasn't anything coming from the corporate environment. And actually, if there's one thing I know about governments, you can really get their ear if big global corporates contact them and say, this is a load of rubbish, we're not going to support this. So we instigated some private letters to the government, and I think on top of the other work that people were doing, I think we managed to stop that huge juggernaut of the GRA finally by the beginning of September.
Well, I should explain, if people don't realise, it's GRA, is the Gender Recognition Act 2004, and there was a very, very real threat to rolling back of trans rights. I mean, it was so worrying, wasn't it? It caused so much anxiety in the trans community. It really did. So even though the end result was disappointing in that they didn't actually reform the GRA as we would have liked, and as the survey had, the results had said they wanted it. Actually, what we managed to do was actually stop that rolling back of the rights, and that was the success of it, wasn't it?
It was, and you know, it was a phenomenal achievement. You know, I think you know as well as I do that, and I don't think this is particularly widely known, but you know, I think we've both seen the extent of the proposals that were
shocking.
Awful. It would have wrecked the careers and the lives of particularly trans women, but all trans people and non-binary people in the UK, and would have put the UK back even more in terms of LGBTQ rights. You know, I think it's one thing that I find frustrating, actually, because I think, you know, 10 years ago, I think the UK was a leader in LGBTQ rights and human rights, actually, and lots of that actually is down to Michael Cashman, Lord Cashman, and his work in European Parliament. But you know, we've seen the UK slide down the rankings.
Yep.
But there seems to be this just underlying belief that everything's still okay in the UK, and it's absolutely not. No. You know, Argentina are further ahead in trans rights than we are these days. So
that says a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah, you know, it's shocking and shameful, actually, that we're actually going backwards on lots of these issues. But the Trans Rights and Human Rights campaign really was the next stage on from those letters and stopping the GRA. Because what I wanted to do was, you know, we had stopped this big, huge negative juggernaut, and that kind of was a victory, but didn't really feel much like a victory, really. I really wanted to try and do something positive for trans people. I wanted to show trans people that despite all of the rubbish that came out from anti-trans groups and certain authors over the course of this year, you know, it's not the truth. No. It's absolutely not the truth. There are so many organisations out there that absolutely support trans people and absolutely will help them flourish in their careers and their lives, and that's what I wanted to show. We got some. I have to give loads of credit, actually, to Pedro Pino in Google for giving me a kick up the bum to really do it, actually. So I was on a panel with him. Pedro's an amazing man. And I was on a panel with him, and I was annoyed, actually. I remember that day, you know, because organisations weren't stepping up how they should be to support trans people, and I said that during the panel, that actually saying you're trans supportive and trans aware is brilliant but useless. You know, we don't need people saying that they're trans aware and trans supportive. We need people showing that they're trans aware and trans supportive. Literally, I think a couple of hours after that, Pedro had put me in contact with Stonewall. He'd got Google on board. I dragged along all of the Trans in the City organisations, and we had this foundation of something really positive, and that's what trans rights and human rights came out of. It was really a coalition of lots of different organisations and people signing up. And like these things, the first few weeks are always difficult, with people asking you who else has signed up, and nobody wanted to jump on board until somebody else had. And then
I think the turning point was when we got the British Army on board. I think that was, as soon as they did, I think a lot of other people thought, well, because a lot of people were hiding, especially things like local authorities, saying, well, we can't get involved with this, it's political, it's a hot potato. So, actually, the British Army have signed up.
Yeah. Certainly the point that lots of public organisations came on board. I mean, I think, right at the start, I think actually the turning point was Citigroup coming on board. Citigroup were the first sort of real blue chip organisation to come on board. And you know what? To be fair, there's a group of organisations that are always strongest and first to support trans people. And I can reel them off. I mean, BP, obviously, Google, Amazon, Clifford Chance, Credit Suisse, SSE, OVO, Citigroup, JP Morgan. They're people organisations that they were pioneers anyway. JLL are another amazing one. They really have been pioneers, and they're at the stage where they're confident enough where they know, they might get a few bad comments, but they're confident enough that they know that that's exactly what it is, a few bad comments. And actually the majority of the country and their customers are either trans supportive or trans apathetic, and actually it's fine. Actually, I don't mind if people don't care.
Exactly. One of my biggest worries before coming out was, how would people react, especially with running my photography and video business? Would I lose clients? My whole livelihood was resting on it, and I was so worried about it because obviously I wasn't protected in law by any anti-discrimination laws. If clients didn't like the fact that I was trans, then they would the phone would stop ringing, and so there was all that. But certainly I found that the vast majority of people are absolutely supportive. They're fine. And okay, often they use clumsy language, and they might ask inappropriate questions and stuff like that. But then that's what I do and you do to help educate people, just so that just to make them feel more at ease with it, and to help with the language and all that kind of stuff. So that's okay, and that's not a problem. But I've certainly found most people are absolutely supportive. They really are.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's almost a UK specific issue. The anti-transgender movement. It's certainly other countries. I mean, I talk to people all over the world. I mean, BP works in 70 companies, and I think all of the other ones are. There's at least one company that is in Trans in the City that works in just about every other country. So, I speak to people all over the world. I run training courses in the Middle East and Singapore and places where you'd think you'd get huge amounts of anti-transgender sentiment, but you don't. The only place where I've run a course where I've actually had really vocal anti-transgender sentiment is in the UK, and that's actually a small, tiny group of people. Yeah, you can see the anti-transgender groups have the same membership.
Oh yeah,
You know?
yeah. They're small, but they're just very vocal, aren't they? It's just,
and they're very well connected. You know,
they are.
I mean, they have some really high profile people with huge amounts of followers.
Yeah.
And you know, the vacuum of knowledge actually around what transgender really is, that it's like a perfectly natural variation of being human. That vacuum of that knowledge allows those really well-connected people to fill it with misdirection and lies and rubbish. I was going to say bullshit, but you probably don't want to say.
You can say what you like, Bobby.
Utter bullshit, whether it comes from the wizarding world or whether it comes from the real world.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think it's all about education, isn't it? I think, but then some people just don't want to be educated.
No, but it's, you know, I actually think that's really rare. You know.
Yeah.
As some people, I've come across very few people that, you know, they might not care about the science. They might not care that, you know, it's estrogen, testosterone, and receptivity and genetics and, you know, all of those things. They might not care about all of that stuff. But most people do care about the journey.
Yeah.
Most people care about the experience, and most people are interested that I and you have a different experience of life.
Yeah, and that's
the thing that all people always find interesting.
Yeah, and that's what I found is that the most powerful part of my trans awareness training course is the section where I tell my story and educate people through that, because then I'm explaining different things along the way, and I find that in itself, you know, even if you don't say anything else, just tell my story, that in itself, you know, spreads so much awareness just by doing that, and it really does. People really empathise, and they think, oh, God, how would I feel if I was in her shoes? And yeah,
exactly. No, and I don't think that's I don't think that's an unusual way of being a human being. You know, I mean, we only have to look on telly, and we have reality TV that's doing that. You know, we only have to look back at storytelling throughout history, and it's always a telling of experience. So, you know, I think people are very much geared up to accepting other people's stories and really learning from them in a way that, you know, many people aren't geared up to learning in an academic way.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So I think it's hugely powerful. And it's hugely important, because every trans person's journey is different. You know?
Yeah.
Every trans person's journey is different. Every person's journey is different. You know, we all have.
Yeah.
None of us are just transgender. We all have different aspects to ourselves, different intersectionalities, just like everybody else does. So.
We're all just people, aren't we?
Exactly, and actually, you know, that telling of personal stories, I think, is the thing that brings that home.
Definitely.
You know, you start the course as a trans person, and you finish the course as a person.
Absolutely, yeah. And going back to when you first came out at work as being trans, how did that all happen, and how did all that go?
It was really interesting. I mean, I was still in a bad place, actually. I mean, I thought I was in a better place than I probably was, but, you know, it was probably about 6 months after the point that I decided I needed to transition, but I hadn't really done anything about it, because it's, even when you do make the decision, it's still a scary thing to go and do, you know.
Massively.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to admit to themselves that they're trans and do something.
No.
They don't want to.
And actually, you know what, they should, because it's, you know, trans is seen as the bad outcome, isn't it? But it's absolutely not. There's no reason why. No,
not at all.
Somebody that's trans can't flourish in their life like everybody else. But I've kind of, I've been helping. So the transgender working group at BP had started in June that year, and I've been helping them Um, because as you'd expect from people that weren't trans, they didn't have the foggiest idea what they were talking about.
No.
So I started helping them with some of the science behind it and all of the rest, because I'd been studying what trans is for about 15 years by then, trying to figure out, who the hell am I? So I knew a whole lot of stuff that all of a sudden I found an audience for. And I knew at that stage I was going to have to come out, but I slowly came out to 2 or 3 people in that trans working group. And I went to talk to an amazing man called Simon Hodgkinson at BP. Because it was the time that actually I knew I had to fully come out. Now, my coming out story, like loads of people's coming out story, is long and complex and convoluted and stretches back 30 years, the different people that I came out to and knew over the years. But this really was the moment that I really flung open the curtains and said, this is me to everybody. And I was convinced I was going to lose my job. I was convinced I was going to have to leave BP and I'd probably lose my business. And, I was self-employed at the time, exactly the same as you. Right. So huge risk. And I went into BP. I hadn't actually planned to tell Simon. He's the Chief Information Security Officer at BP, so very senior manager. He was my manager, funnily enough, when I first worked at BP as a permanent employee 20 years ago. So I knew him, and he's an amazing manager. And just through the conversation that I had planned to have, which is what we could do to improve trans awareness in BP, I came out to him. And I think it took him about 1 second to turn around and say, you're not going to leave BP, and anything that you need, you're going to come back and tell me what it is, and I'll sort it out for you.
Fantastic.
BP's always been an inclusive company. It wasn't a trans-friendly company because it wasn't trans-aware. But from that one conversation, I think Simon saved my career, and he probably saved my life, actually, in lots of ways. And that's where everything really sprung from. That really gave me the confidence to really come out in BP. And it gave me the confidence. I was fairly well known in BP. So I was a senior manager when I was permanent in the early 2000s, and loads of people. I've been in and out of BP for 20 years as a consultant, so loads of people knew me. So I knew it was going to cause a splash. And it was really that conversation with Simon that I thought, well, it's going to cause a splash, so I'll make it the biggest bloody splash that anybody's ever seen. And I'll blow.
Really?
I had this phrase that year, actually, that I wanted to blow the bloody doors off trans awareness in BP, and I did. And with the help of some really amazing people, and Freddie Cormack, I think
Freddie's lovely, yes, he's brilliant.
And Charlie Wheeler, and members of the trans working group, Chris Moody, so many other people. We absolutely. I don't think BP knew what the hell had hit it that year. We just created such a tsunami of noise around it, and it helped so many other people that weren't trans, because all of a sudden, there was me standing up talking about gender confirmation surgery and penises and clitorises and suicide and all the rest of the stuff in this really tranquil pool of BP. And all of a sudden, everyone was talking about mental well-being and menopause and everything else that they wanted to talk about. And it really, I think, transformed BP from being an inclusive company to being a real advocate of inclusion, which is a huge difference. And everything sprung really from that from that point. You know, I've got so much support in BP. You know, people sending me messages, giving me hugs, just encouraging me every single step of the way, and it was really, and it is something that's really special to me. And you know, I'm a permanent member of staff there again now, so it's lovely. It feels like coming home in lots of ways.
It's amazing. You know, coming out for me was one of the most worrying times of my life, and I was absolutely dreading it. But actually, when it actually came to it, it turned out to be one of the most uplifting experiences of my life. It was just incredible. It wasn't what I was expecting at all. You know, the message of support was just amazing.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, it is, because it's, I mean, I think especially for older trans people, because, you know, we carry a lot of baggage from younger years where it wasn't as acceptable, absolutely wasn't as acceptable. I mean, I know one of my friends came out and she lost her career as one of Ireland's top makeup artists, lost her company, lost her house, ended up a prostitute in the worst part of London, and an amazing woman, Rebecca de Havilland. And I know, you know, another one of my best friends came out 15 years ago and was a graphic artist with an amazing company she built up, and she lost that, and she lost her house and everything, and had to start from scratch. You know? But she has. I mean, she's an amazing businesswoman now. Has two Porsches, which she won't let me drive. And,
that's a bit mean.
I know, disgraceful.
Yeah.
Now, what sort of friend is she?
Yeah.
But no, you know. So it's interesting actually that lots of people have such a bad view of what will happen when they do come out, but actually I've seen so many trans people completely flourish, completely make such a success of their life and careers in a way that they never would have done before. I mean, you're a fantastic example of that, you know. I mean, I know you've done some amazing things anyway, you know. You've been like a photographer in war zones, and you've done all of those amazing things, but you know, the things that you're doing now, and I think, you know, the things that you'll go on to do will just dwarf those things that you did before.
Thank you. Yeah, I just
don't have the reins on who you are anymore. You know?
Not at all, and I'm just going for it now. I'm just thinking, of course. Really go for it. I'm the real me, and I think people can see that. People can see authenticity, and that's what the journey is all about, isn't it? Being the real, you know, just being the real me, being the real you. And people can see that, and people warm to that. You know, they can see through phonies a mile off.
Yeah, of course they can. Of course they can. And it's, you know, I think that you know, that real, what the hell, let's just go for it, is part of the confidence you get from knowing that you're just you now. Yeah. You don't have anything to hide, so, you know, all the reins are off.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
And that's really go for it.
Yeah, and you know, with my sort of the missions that I'm on is just one is to reach out to other trans people, to let them know that it's okay to be trans, because so many trans people don't know that, and they beat themselves up about it and give themselves such a hard time about it. But then when they can see people like you and I who are much happier now, hopefully it will give them that confidence to say, yeah, it really is okay to be trans. And then obviously the other side of it is to educate the general public about it, just to get that more acceptance and going.
Absolutely. There. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, well, thanks so much for joining me today, Bobbi. It's been an absolute pleasure. I was really looking forward to today. So, so what I'll do is I'll put your contact details and all websites and all that on the end of the video, so that people can contact you and they can see all the stuff that you've been getting up to. So, and And thanks everyone for watching. And please join me on the next episode of Cool People. I've got lots more cool people lined up as well. So please join me then.